Hello again, everybody. This is coming back mainly because of a question Butch put in, which was about how do I actually stretch the sprue when I was describing, bending up bits the other day. There was a piece I had here that had a nice 90-degree bend on it. And so I thought I'd come back and try to show that a bit. And also, another shout out, another thank you to Barry T for putting out another Lincoln video on how they narrowed the front end and fitted disc brakes. With what I've got around here, Barry, I think we've just more or less done that with the spare front axle. Did I say forks? Bloody hell. Front axle, narrowed the front axle the other day on the Lincoln. And I saw the other video where he Z cutted the axle. I thought, wow, if this one fits, I think it might be a bit spindly. I'll have to have a proper look later, but that was brilliant, Barry, and seeing their discs. And these are quite nice discs out of this 32, so I think they could well be going on the Lincoln. Well done, Barry. Thank you again very much indeed. Terrific. Like I said, the main thing about this was stretching sprue, and also a bit more about this jig I was making the other day for centre drilling anything, really, quite frankly. Because I've dug out I've sawn off. That was a trick bit of sawing, I tell you. They were on the side of a moulded part on the side of the supercharger. So that was sawing them off of there, and I used a really fine X saw blade, and I didn't put it in a holder iron. There it is. I used this, and it's an X saw blade of 40 something odd TPI. Here, read that. There's TPI, and it was made by a company called Airwaves. I'm sure this was an Airwaves blade, and it's meant to go in a Swan Morton blade holder. Yeah, scalpel. So after the struggle of sawing these off to connect them to any of the turbo fittings, I need to drill in the centre of that for a locating pin. So I've expanded the hole. Well, I haven't. I've re-drilled another hole. There's my initial hole from the other day. It's yesterday, I think, or the day before. I don't know. I've knocked out a couple recently. So down there, where it's a nice, good, solid bit of plastic, styrene, I've drilled another hole. This one had a bigger pilot because I knew I was going to be drilling a bigger hole. And then I used a wood bit with to actually mill slot down in there so as I can get my old SU here. That's the filter end. Bit of ribbon across there as a mesh filter. And that'll pop into there. And locate solid for me to drill in from the other side. And I've also drilled another shelf so as it'll locate in on the flange, which I was saying about a square piece going into a round hole. It will still centre it. Out of the way, candle. And that's locked in there pretty firmly. It's a bit hard to hold. I probably ought to trim this bit of sprue down. Yes, I do. I'll saw that down now. I'm getting into bigger holes and wobbling a bit. But that's still the principle, and it gives you a centre hole. And I want to these mate quite well with the the turbo size pieces there, that was meant to be a carburetor. Well, I think there's a plenum chamber rather than a carburetor. I think there's a carburetor to go onto it. But if I replace the SU onto there and then connect them to the side, I think we're going places. I hadn't really had time to sit down because I was doing something completely different. So if I always when you're doing this, I'll be a bit health and safety here, you know, clear stuff away so as you have got a sort of safe environment, and all your glues and flammable liquids are out of the way, you know. And if you watch what you've got on your clothing as well, you don't really want your arm to suddenly go up in flames because of something you didn't realise you had on it or what it's made out of. So I just light this candle. I generally use these nightlight types. This one's actually a scare gnats away one, so it's scented, but who cares? I don't mind that it's scented. And when they get down to a little bit like that, I melt them all down into one of these things with a bit of string in there as a new wick, and use the rest of it. I know they only cost a few pennies, but you know, even the aluminium tubs, I mean, that aluminum, you probably make something out of that. It's quite a nice thickness of tub. So I've got some different pieces that I have already stretched, and that gives you the idea that they'll sort of come out into a sort of length of rod, or a hotter thing, it'll be thinner. And one thing I found handy, if I haven't pinged it out of the way, is something like this. If you can see, there is a piece of black sleeving. This is hair fine down here, so I was able to quite easily feed it down the centre of the sleeving, which is normally really awkward when you want actually to get something of that thickness into it. This isn't going to show, is it? If I can see, that taper helps you feed in through that hole, so where I'm down to a thickness, and I'm going to use this end piece. But you know, it doesn't matter whether it's plastic or wire. At the end of the day, it's just going to be a little fitting. That sort of, you know, that 10mm is the piece I'm using. Not this bit twanging out here, but it just made that easy to locate. The other thing I made was the engine mountings for this Cadillac motor. This is a piece of quite chunky sprue, which I warmed up and pressed in to the locating point there, and that, like this one, moulded that shape. And then I carried on preparing that to a shape that I wanted and used in the chassis. And that sort of pretty much locks in there. Ta-da! Right, because it's moulded to the shape. In fact, there's a bit of pull to get that out of there, so it's more or less locating in like a mortise, not a mortise, a dovetail. You know, it's locking in a bit. So that's just a piece of heated sprue. I made 2 of them, and they're now buried in the assembly over in the chassis to locate the engine. Handy stuff, splashing sprue. So I'll sit down and try not to knock the camera over, and roll my sleeves up out of the way. If I move you around a bit, that might help me rather than help you. Like I said, I've got some sprue here. This is a piece of, I find this really handy. This is Airfix sprue from a tank kit. Probably a Panzer IV, because I do think they're a brilliant donor for cogs and sprockets and things, and I must look into a Churchill as well. So what you do is hold it about Hang on. Hold it about 3 or 4 inches above the flame, and watch the area that is, you feel where the heat rises up through, and just watch it for a minute. I like to take a minute or two to do this. If you go too close, you end up scorching it and locally melting it rather than softening a general area. So if you're a bit further now, you can see it's changing shape slightly. It's getting a bit foggy. You want to just give it a minute or two, find out where the heat is. It's so bloody cold out here. This is central heating, centrally between my hands. Oh, come on. Now I found a bit of plastic that doesn't want to melt for the sake of Napoleon. There we go. Now it started getting glossy. Can you see that up the top there? Right. When it starts, and nice and floppy, right? And if you pull this quite slowly, it will remain quite thick. And hold it steady for a minute. Not that I can ever hold anything steady. Or you should see me slopping a pint of beer all over the bloody place. And you're now left with a stretch. As you can see by the end there, it's not round, it is a sort of hexy sort of shape. And when it's down to a millimetre in cross section, if I just lock that through, if this is turned into a cube, you'll get something that's sort of nut-like. It's not brilliant, but when you're talking about, I'm now going to slice this down to 1/2 mil thick. So I've got this. There. The mere fact that it's got a slight edge to it rather than it being round will give a nut effect to the passer's eye, unless they're wearing binoculars. And that's up to them, isn't it? You know, so you get, varying your way down the taper, you'll get different thicknesses of nut. So it's hard to get consistency. You can only do a few in a section and think, yeah, they're generally still the same size. They're generally still the same size. But then it's starting to get a bit wider. But yet again, they're just bigger nuts, you know, until they get to, you know, then you're into the stage where you really need to buy nuts, or there should hopefully be nuts that size built in that are, I even lift nuts, you know, like I was saying about lifting door panel details. Where's my nut? I'll save that. Door panel details. There are panels that have got nuts, bolts, different fittings you can lift in the same way. I'll stretch another bit. This is who made this? Possibly Dragon, this bit of sprue, I'm not quite sure. They all seem to have different melting points, so that's something that's gone quite quickly, a lot less struggle than the old Airfix bit of sprue, and you can see that glassy sheen it'll get. And if you just wait a minute, I do actually quite like to feel the heat. It's only a candle, I mean it's not major burns. He's still in mash, I think. Come on, so cold in here, nothing's getting heat in it unless you're a... Alright, there you go, see it's got really glossy. If we go into an ultra fine bit of wire, bastard pinged. Oops, sorry, French. Oh, that'll still give me a... You know, I can go back into there and try and get the heat to warm up this little area there. And we'll go for another little tug, there we go. Right, shit. If it keeps on slipping out your hands, that is a bugger because it will go squiggly. But that squiggle is often the end of some sort of fitting, you know. Don't despair. And it's only sprue, it's cost nothing. If it comes in handy, brilliant. If it doesn't, it's only a bit of sprue, you were going to throw it away anyway. If you get something that's bigger, then you can really start sculpting the things. This is a chunk of sprue. Warm it up, squished it down, you know, onto a, get hot. I wonder, you know, just do that rapidly. This is quite a brutal use of sprue. But the pliers are in reach, bloody side cutters. So warm up a fat bit. And hopefully with a few tweaks, squeeze it down a bit, squeeze it back up. I hope to have something that will look reasonably like. Could have done that a bit better. I don't want to give the game away by finishing that sentence. Could have done with a longer stump, really. Squiggle it down again. Thing is, sometimes you can get this and do it several times depending on how. Right, let's squiggle that down there. Squiggle that back up so as we're nearly square. I want a rectangular shape there. Right, there you go. That's basically what I wanted. If I can find a pen, not a bloody monotone. If we think of, say that, file that a bit squarer maybe, I don't know, put a cap there, a cap there. Cut it off. You got the best part of a master cylinder for a car that, you know, a power booster for brakes by carving up a little bit of sprue. And a lot of cars don't have them. Squidge it down. By the time you painted it black and put a bit of wire across, you know, a couple of discs as caps, a couple of fittings on the side there, with your twiggly bits of wire coming out and a bit of wire over the caps, you'll end up with quite a nice brake booster. And I mean, I've just done this one in seconds, fanning around. If you're doing it properly, take a longer bit of sprue, take more time, have a squidge around. And so I started doing this one the other day, so I thought, oh, right, a single doovery one, but it's all just a bit of squidge. And you know, a bit of sanding here and there, add on a disc, a bolt, a bit of wire, and you'll be convincing somebody's eye that there's a power booster there. Was there anything else on that bit? Oh, there's another bit of sprue. If anyone's building motorbike kits as well, look in the sprue of that. This came, a mate of mine does bike kits. This was a shape in his sprue, and I thought, wow, look at all the kinks and bends and hose fittings there. And he'd love it in the bin, in the trash. There's another bit of stretched delivery one. But that about wraps it up. Hopefully that helps you. Don't burn yourselves. Do take as much care as you can. And just go gently first and feel that, because they will heat up at different rates, really. Depending on the age of the styrene, the formula it was made out of it, the ambient temperature and all sorts of, and then sometimes it doesn't work completely, it just falls apart. Have fun. So best wishes from jolly old England. Bye.